I didn't expect him to reach for me in the middle of that dense, humid heat. Not with the way he had been avoiding eye contact, not after the kind of week I'd had, but as the steam curled around us like smoke from a fire barely contained. I felt the sudden brush of his fingers across my knee, and in that moment, everything that had been routine about that gym became something entirely different, something I couldn't forget even if I tried. The gym had long been my escape. The late-night hours, a sacred space where the clatter of weights and hum of treadmills faded into near silence. It was almost 11 p.m., and I had the place practically to myself. Or so I thought. I'd just finished a brutal set of incline presses, sweat pouring off me, the kind of fatigue that quiets the mind and awakens something raw. That's when I first noticed him. Leaning against the mirrored wall near the water fountain, his towel slung low around his hips, and a look that wasn't just tired. It was watchful. Hey, if you're here and feeling the vibe already, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe to support these stories and help more people find them. It means the world, and it keeps us going. Thanks for being here. He had that build that didn't try too hard, lean but firm, with a kind of elegance you don't often see in men who bench for size. His hair was damp from the shower, sticking slightly to his forehead, and his eyes were dark in a way that made you second-guess whether he was interested or just lost in thought. Our eyes met, and in the fleeting second before he looked away, something passed between us. Not a word, but not silence either. I headed toward the sauna, craving heat that would loosen my muscles and maybe the tight knot that had been growing inside my chest for days. I had just wrapped a long towel around my waist and stepped into the cedar-scented heat when the door creaked open behind me. It was him. He didn't say anything at first, just sat opposite me on the lower bench, elbows on knees, gaze down, steam rising between us like a veil. The silence hung thick, not awkward, but charged. I closed my eyes, letting the heat soak into me, but I was hyper-aware of every shift he made, every subtle change in his posture. 5 minutes passed, maybe more. The only sound was the hiss of the rocks as I poured more water onto them, watching the steam bloom. When I looked at him again, he was staring directly at me. Not a stare of challenge. It was something softer, cautious, curious, and maybe even a little hopeful. "So, you always come this late?" His voice cracked the quiet like a match being struck. Deep, low, and a little husky, like he hadn't used it in a while. "Only when I want the place to myself," I said, smiling faintly. "Guess tonight's an exception." He smirked, but didn't laugh. "I like the quiet too," he said, then paused before adding, "but it's not so bad sharing it." And then he leaned back, one leg stretching out toward mine. Not touching, not yet, but it didn't need to. My skin reacted as if he had, the heat no longer coming just from the rocks in the corner. There was a kind of rhythm building between us now, a conversation our bodies were having before our mouths could catch up. When his hand slowly reached down to adjust the edge of his towel, I could feel my pulse rise. His fingers brushed against his own thigh, then paused, and without looking up, he asked, almost too casually, "You ever come in here? With someone?" I let the silence stretch before answering. "Number not until tonight." That's when he finally looked up, his eyes locked onto mine, and the space between us felt like it had collapsed, like gravity had shifted just slightly. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached across the distance and let his fingertips graze the side of my knee. Barely touching, but it might as well have been an electric current. My breath hitched. In the middle of that dim, wood-paneled room, surrounded by mist and shadow, something changed. We were no longer two strangers sweating out the stress of our lives. We were two men caught in a quiet collision, one that neither of us had seen coming, and one that neither of us seemed ready to stop. His fingers barely touched me, but the meaning was unmistakable. Cautious, curious, and just daring enough to ask the question neither of us had spoken aloud. I didn't pull away. I didn't speak. I let my legs stay there, close, still, waiting. "I'm Marcus," he said softly, like the name might shatter the fragile energy between us if spoken too loud. "Eli," I replied, voice low, almost swallowed by the steam. "You from around here?" He gave a small nod, then shrugged. "I come here late because I don't always like being seen." There was something behind those words, something that made my chest ache a little. Shame, fear, or just the exhaustion of hiding. "I get that," I said. "I like the quiet, but sometimes it's more about avoiding noise I don't know how to shut off." His eyes flickered toward mine with a kind of recognition that felt too intimate for two people who had just exchanged names. The sauna felt smaller now, closer. Every second stretched longer, each breath a little heavier. Marcus shifted, moving up to the top bench beside me. He didn't sit too close, but close enough that the heat from his skin touched mine. His arm brushed against mine briefly, not by accident. He looked forward, voice low. "I wasn't sure if you'd be okay with me sitting here." I turned my head, letting my shoulder graze his just enough to be clear. "I am." We sat like that for a long moment, skin against skin, silence wrapped in steam, until he tilted his head just a little so our faces were closer than before. I could smell the soap on his skin, the sweat, the cedar. "If I'm wrong, stop me," he whispered, and before I could say anything, he leaned in and brushed his lips against mine. It was slow, software. Not hesitant, just careful, like he was afraid I'd vanish if he moved too fast. I kissed him back, not hard, but with intention, enough to let him know this wasn't a mistake. His hand moved up, resting lightly against my chest, and mine found his thigh, warm and tense beneath the towel. There was nothing hurried about it, nothing rushed, just two men kissing in a quiet pocket of the night, steam rising around us like a secret. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone in that gym. The kiss ended, but the electricity it left behind lingered between us, wrapping tighter than the steam around our skin. Neither of us moved right away. Our foreheads rested together, our breaths mingling, and in that suspended moment, the rest of the world stopped existing. Marcus let out a breath, almost a laugh, but it was shaky. "I wasn't expecting tonight to go like this." "Me either," I said, and my voice sounded different, like it had dropped an octave under the weight of everything I was feeling. "But I'm not complaining." He pulled back just enough to look me in the eye. "You sure?" I nodded slowly. "I've never been more sure about something I didn't see coming." He smiled, the kind of smile that comes from relief more than happiness, and then reached for my hand, guiding it gently, deliberately, to his bare chest. I felt the rapid beat of his heart under my palm, and in return, I let my fingers trail slowly, tracing the line between his collarbones. We weren't speaking now. We didn't need to. His lips found mine again, firmer this time, and his hand slid across my back with a kind of reverence, like he was learning me through touch alone. My towel had loosened around my waist, and I didn't bother fixing it. Neither did he. The heat from the sauna had become something else now, a pulse between us. His hands were on my thighs, slow and steady, never rushing. He kissed along my jaw, then down my neck, each press of his lips drawing a shiver that clashed with the oppressive heat. I tilted my head back, letting him explore, and then I pulled him in closer, letting our bodies meet without space between. The contact was electric, warm, real, and then he whispered, "We shouldn't," But he didn't stop. Instead, he cupped the side of my face, pressing his forehead to mine again. "Not here, not like this. Come with me." The words struck something deep in me, a tether between impulse and intention. I nodded, not because I wanted to stop, but because something told me this night still had more to give, and not just in the sauna. We stood together side by side, bodies still close, towels barely clinging to us. He reached for the door, opened it, and paused, his hand brushing mine again, this time with more confidence. No one was outside, just the quiet hum of the vending machines and the low buzz of fluorescent lights. He turned to me, smile slow and a little mischievous. "Lockers?" I smirked. "Let's get out of here." And just like that, we stepped into something neither of us had planned, something burning brighter than the heat we left behind in that wooden room. We moved through the quiet gym like shadows, still wrapped in towels, still buzzing from what had happened. Or maybe what hadn't yet. Every footstep echoed more than it should have, but neither of us said a word. He led the way down the corridor toward the locker room, glancing back only once to see if I was still with him. I was, completely. The locker room was empty, not just quiet, empty. Most of the lights were on a dim energy-saving mode, casting long, soft reflections across the tile floors. Marcus walked to the last row of lockers in the corner, where we'd be out of view from the entrance. He turned, leaned back against the cool metal, and let his towel fall to the bench behind him. He wasn't being bold. He was being honest. I stood still for a moment, just watching him. His chest was still damp with sweat and steam, his skin flushed in places from the heat. His expression was open, not seductive, not aggressive, just real, vulnerable in a way I hadn't expected. "You okay?" I asked, even though I could see he was. He nodded. "I just didn't want it to be rushed. That thing in the sauna. I didn't want it to be the only part of this that felt real." I stepped closer, slowly unwrapping my own towel, letting it fall to the bench beside his. "It wasn't the only real thing," I said, "but I'm glad we left when we did." He reached for my hand again, not urgently, but like he needed the anchor. I laced my fingers through his, and for a long, still moment, we just stood there, breathing in sync, bare skin brushing bare skin. When we kissed again, it was different. It wasn't exploratory now. It was confirmation. His lips found mine with the kind of surety that comes only after you've already decided you want more. His hand moved up to my neck, pulling me in close, and I let my own hand drift down his back, feeling every line, every shiver, every breath he pulled when our bodies pressed together. He laid me gently onto the bench, one leg between mine, his chest over mine, and there was this deep, slow rhythm to everything he did, like he was memorizing me, not just touching me. His mouth brushed against my shoulder, then my collarbone, then returned to my lips. I could feel his need growing, not just physically, but in the way he looked at me, like he had been holding something back for far too long. "I don't usually do this," he murmured against my cheek. "Me either," I whispered, and it wasn't a lie. He paused, his forehead against mine, our breaths tangled. "Then let's not waste it," he said. We didn't, but we also didn't rush. There was touching, kissing, soft groans and careful movements, a dance that was more about feeling than finishing. I kissed the curve of his jaw, and he sighed like no one had done that before. And just when things could have escalated further, just when it felt like the moment would tip, the locker room door creaked open. We froze, our breath caught mid-motion. A distant voice echoed from the front. "Cleaning crew, 10 minutes." Marcus looked down at me, wide-eyed, and then broke into a quiet laugh. The kind you can't stop even when you know you should. I laughed too, covering my mouth with his shoulder. Both of us suddenly teenagers again, caught in a stolen moment. "Guess we have to move," I whispered. He nodded, standing and reaching for our towels, tossing mine over to me. "My place?" he said. I didn't hesitate. "Lead the way." The car ride was quiet, but it wasn't awkward. We didn't need to speak. Our hands touched lightly in the center console, and every glance exchanged in the passing streetlights was a promise. This doesn't end at the gym. Marcus lived about 15 minutes away, a second-floor apartment in an older building that smelled faintly of dust, soap, and something warm I couldn't quite place. As soon as we stepped inside, he locked the door behind us and turned to me, a quiet tension in his eyes that hadn't left since the sauna. "I didn't think this would happen tonight," he said softly, leaning against the door. I stepped closer until there was barely room between us. "Neither did I, but I don't want it to stop." He let out a slow breath and reached for me again, this time not hesitantly, but with a steady urgency, pulling me into a kiss that was deep, slow, and grounding. His hands slid up under my shirt as if they'd been waiting there all night, his palms warm and smooth against my back. I let mine explore too, running across the firm stretch of his chest, the curve of his waist, every breath he took deepening the gravity between us. We stumbled down the short hallway, never breaking contact, shedding clothes piece by piece like layers of a story we didn't need to tell anymore. In his bedroom, he pulled me close, our bodies bare, the glow of a bedside lamp wrapping us in amber light. We kissed again and again, not rushed, not greedy, just real. He traced a hand along my jaw, his thumb brushing just beneath my bottom lip. "You're not like the others," he said, voice low. "Not some stranger I'll forget tomorrow." "You won't have to," I whispered. "I won't let you." He smiled, not cocky, but like he was surprised someone had just said that to him. Then he moved in slowly, his lips kissing down my neck, his hands drawing lazy lines over my hips, his breath heating my skin in waves. The way he touched me felt like a language, one I somehow already understood, even though I'd never spoken it with anyone quite like him. When I laid back, he followed, not climbing over me, but settling beside me, our legs tangled, our foreheads pressed together. There was still heat, still hunger, but there was also something gentler pulsing beneath it, the kind of closeness that made your chest ache even as it thrilled you. We explored each other like that, through long touches, slow kisses, fingers grazing ribs, hands cradling backs of necks, as if we were trying to memorize the shape of something we hadn't dared believe could exist. And as the minutes passed and the quiet wrapped tighter around us, there was a moment, a soft, sharp moment, where I realized I didn't want this to just be tonight. He brushed a hand through my hair and said quietly, "Stay." I didn't even have to think about it. I was hoping you'd ask. We didn't sleep right away, not because we were doing more, but because we were still caught in each other, breathing together, tangled together, not quite ready to let the night end. And somewhere between a kiss and a laugh, he whispered, "It's crazy, right?" "Yeah," I replied, "but maybe crazy is exactly what I needed." Morning light crept in through the edges of the blinds, soft and golden, slipping over Marcus's bare shoulder as he lay beside me. I was awake before him, eyes tracing the line of his back, the gentle rise and fall of his breath. It had been a long time since I'd woken up next to someone, and longer still since I'd actually wanted to. His arm was still wrapped around my waist, hand resting loosely against my hip, like he was holding on to something even in sleep. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to break the spell that had somehow lasted through the night. But he stirred. His eyes fluttered open slowly, landing on me with a quiet, sleep-warmed smile. "You're still here." I said I'd stay. He shifted closer, resting his forehead against mine. "It wasn't just the sauna, was it?" "No," I said, "not even close." He closed his eyes for a beat. "I haven't done this in a long time. Let someone stay." Let someone in. I could hear the weight in his voice. Not regret, just fear. The kind that doesn't come from last night, but from everything before it. You don't have to explain, I said gently, brushing my fingers along his side. But he did anyway. I got out of something last year. Someone who made me feel like I had to keep parts of myself small, safe. I kept going to the gym just to feel strong again, like maybe I could rebuild without all the cracks showing. I let that sit between us, a truth that felt fragile but also fierce. I know what that's like, I said. I've hidden too, from people who made me feel like I wasn't enough unless I fit into their idea of what I should be. He looked at me, really looked, and then he kissed me again, slow and aching, like he was thanking me without words. We eventually made our way to the kitchen, barely dressed, still brushing shoulders as if afraid too much space would undo everything we'd shared. He made coffee. I leaned against the counter, watching him, studying the way he moved, comfortable now, relaxed in a way he hadn't been when I first saw him at the gym. You ever think maybe we meet the right people at the wrong time? He asked as he handed me a mug. Yeah, I said, sipping. But I also think maybe the timing feels wrong because we never expected anything good to happen. He laughed, a short, real sound. You really talk like someone who means what he says. I do, especially about this. He stepped closer again, his free hand finding my side. Oh, so what now? We go back to the gym and pretend last night didn't happen. I shook my head. We go back and act like two guys who aren't hiding anymore. Marcus looked at me, and I saw something shift. A wall lowering, a corner turning. Okay. Yeah, I want that. We stood there for a long time, not rushing, not planning too far ahead, just letting the morning hold us while the world outside waited. Because sometimes the most unforgettable things don't happen in the heat of the moment. They happen in what comes after. A few nights later, I returned to the gym. Same time, same scent of iron and sweat, same flickering hallway light near the cardio machines. But this time, it wasn't about escaping something. It was about returning to something I didn't know I'd needed until I found it. Until him. Marcus was already there when I walked in. He was sitting on a bench near the stretching area, wearing a dark tank top that clung to his chest, a soft smile tugging at his lips when he saw me. But the most noticeable thing about him wasn't how good he looked. It was how open he seemed, like the weight on his shoulders had lifted just a little since that night. He stood, walked over, and bumped his shoulder lightly into mine. Thought you'd flake. On this? Not a chance. We did a light workout together, something casual, more about sharing space than pushing limits. There was an ease between us now, joking, small glances, those subtle brushes of skin that spoke more than full conversations. After a while, we found ourselves walking past the sauna again. He paused near the door, glancing at it like it was some secret passage only we understood. You want to go in? He asked. I smirked. Kind of feels like coming full circle. We stepped inside, letting the warmth wrap around us. This time, there was no nervous tension, no questions unspoken. We sat side by side, shoulders touching, eyes closed, just letting the heat settle into our bones. I've been thinking, Marcus said after a few minutes, about that night. I turned to him. What about it? He shifted slightly, facing me. About how fast it happened, about how right it still feels, and how terrifying that is. I let that land, then nodded. Sometimes the scariest things are the ones that feel real too quickly. But I don't want to run from it, he said. From you. I want to move forward, but I'm afraid if we move too fast, we'll burn out. I reached over and placed a hand on his thigh, grounding him. Then we don't rush. We go slow. We don't try to make it perfect. We just make it ours." His eyes softened, and he leaned forward, resting his forehead against mine again, the same way he had in the sauna that first night. "That sounds like something I've never had before." "Then let's build it." We sat in silence again, but it wasn't heavy. It was warm, filled with quiet hope. He laced his fingers through mine, and I could feel that something between us had changed, deepened. It wasn't just heat or lust anymore. It was something far more dangerous, far more beautiful. Connection. Just as we stood to leave, he turned back to me with that same slow, mischievous grin he wore the night we left the sauna together. "Think they'll kick us out again?" I laughed. "Probably, but it might be worth it." He pulled me in close, lips brushing my ear. "Next time, let's bring extra towels." And just like that, we stepped back into the hallway, into the world, not as strangers who shared a sauna, but as two men walking towards something that, for once, felt like more than just a moment. It's strange how quickly something unfamiliar can start to feel like home. A glance, a touch, a night shared in a sauna when you least expect it, and suddenly, the rhythm of your life shifts. Over the next few weeks, Marcus and I found a pattern. We still hit the gym late, but now we came together. We spotted each other on lifts. We exchanged smirks between sets. We sat in the sauna, sometimes talking, sometimes just leaning into the silence that once held tension, but now felt like peace. But we didn't just exist within the gym. We shared coffee in the mornings when our schedules aligned. He took me to his favorite little diner tucked away in a corner of the city I'd never bothered to explore. I cooked dinner at his place, and he taught me how to make French toast that didn't taste like regret and soggy eggs. One evening, I found a small framed photo on his nightstand. Him as a teenager, smiling awkwardly in a too-big hoodie, standing next to a guy who looked nothing like him but shared the same grin. "My brother," he said when he saw me looking. "He passed a few years ago. Cancer." I didn't say anything right away. I just placed a hand on his back, slow and steady. "He was the only person I came out to back then," he continued. "I didn't tell anyone else for years. I kept everything inside because I didn't know how to be both, me and okay." I turned him toward me, brushing a thumb under his jaw so he'd look up. "You're more than okay now. You're here. And you're letting someone in." He nodded, eyes glassy but brave. "I think I finally found someone who sees me without making me feel small." And I knew exactly what he meant, because I felt the same. The next night, we didn't go to the gym. We stayed in, curled up on the couch, the TV playing some show we barely watched. His head rested against my chest, his fingers drawing circles along my arm. It wasn't about sex or adrenaline or escaping into heat and sweat. It was about stillness, presence, that quiet comfort you find when you finally let someone stay. I kissed the top of his head, slow and soft. "Do you ever think about how random it was," I whispered, "that we both ended up there? Same gym? Same time?" He tilted his face up toward mine, eyes half-lidded with something between affection and disbelief. "Yeah, and I think maybe it wasn't random at all." We didn't need fireworks to know what this was. We had a sauna. We had a late-night gym. We had hands that reached across silence and didn't let go. And now, we had each other.